Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Football Talent Show. There's no Jacek joining me in the intro today, but that's because this is a special episode taking a look back at what has been a memorable 2024 for the podcast. We only started the Football Talent Show back in late October, but the support and engagement from every one of you has been amazing. And I think I can speak for Jacek also when I say we can't wait to build out this project further with exciting new shows planned for 2025. So in what should be a relatively short episode by our standards, I've compiled the best bits from our 9 episodes to date, with special thanks also going to our guests who made these episodes what they are. So let's get on with a little bit of a recap, and then we'll be back in normal fashion on Thursday for another exciting deep dive.
My number 2 is Josh Acheampong. Josh Acheampong is exceptional. He has absolutely everything you'd want. He's a right back who, when he plays as a traditional right back, will bomb on. He'll do overlaps, although it's not actually the biggest part of his game. He'll do overlaps, but his signature move is that incisive dribble. He'll pick up the ball and just turn and dribble straight through the middle, and it'll cut through your whole team. And when we talk about academy players coming to senior football, every single time I do a live stream before a Chelsea game, if Josh Acheampong is on the bench and maybe potentially ready to play, I tell everyone, I promise you, you've not seen 100% of Josh Acheampong if he doesn't do his dribble through the middle of the pitch. That means he's scared. That means he's not showing his full capabilities, in my opinion, because that's what he does when he's at full pelt. His technique on 1v1s is astounding, and then he has the height and the long legs to be able to recover and make big sliding tackles. He has everything. And then we talk about his height, we talk about his 1v1 ability. He fits the exact mold of a right back coming into right centre back if you want to invert the right back into defensive position. The one thing I think he can do slightly even better, if you see him molding into that position, is his passing. His passing is good, but it's not obviously a Levi Colwill. It's not going to, absolutely break lines, but it's even not an Ishe Samuel Smith. It's not quite an Ishe Samuel Smith, who has played more purely as a centre-back. Josh has played as a centre-back, but mostly as a filling-in job. He played against Everton under-18s at the last season. He's played for England in the last couple of internationals next to Harrison Murray-Campbell. So he has played as a centre-back, but Ishe is more used to playing purely as a centre-back, and his passing is a bit more on it for me. But that doesn't matter that much, because look at Antonio Rudiger. I wouldn't say Josh Acheampong is that far off Antonio Rudiger in terms of just purely as passing wise. And you look at Antonio Rudiger under Thomas Tuchel, I see a very similar profile. A guy who gets the ball, is very aggressive, sees space in front of him, takes it on and goes. Very physical, impossible to beat 1v1.
Yeah, that's very true. Such a complete profile. If you'd put Josh in a solid championship side, he would start every game and he would be a standout player. I have zero doubts about it. It's true what you said about Ishe Samuel Smith being more elegant on the ball. That's true, but yeah, Josh can play as a right-sided centre back in a 3-man line as a right back. So incredibly complete profile. Next season, it needs to be a loan to a solid championship side.
For me, it's like if God created a defender, you would literally just have Josh Acheampong fall out of the sky. I mean, literally exactly the physical attributes you would want. There's nothing that you can really desire more in that respect. And for me, it's important that he gets that loan, but it's also important that he stays in English football because he has the physical attributes to directly develop in the English senior game. And like I said, the championship is such a good next step for him. It's exactly where he needs to be, playing so many games in the year, and then a good spell there will see him easily adapt into a more prominent role in this Chelsea squad.
And I'll also say quickly, underrated is his goal scoring. He gets a lot of headers. He gets to the back post, and it's not surprising because of his height, but he does get into the box. And Jacek, it's a very interesting conversation what you said about alone, and Adam as well, because I agreed with you initially, but there is a debate to be had, and I'm interested to see what Chelsea do, because Chelsea have always been a club that puts a lot of players on loan. That's how we've operated. I know that best by literally having an account that followed loan players for 2.5 years. But Now we have a manager who's coming with a very specific style of play. We've heard reports that they've want to copy City a bit, and I've seen Manchester City not necessarily put all their talents out on loan and be ready for the first team. But I'm interested to see what happens with these players, because Enzo Maresca in a press conference was asked about these academy players, Tyreek George and Josh Acheampong, and he said, yes, I love them, whatever. But he also said, I like to mold these players. They're very impressionable at a young age, firstly personality-wise, but also I want to mold them into my type of player. So when you said a win-to-loan move, it's not typical, obviously. We don't often do it. But to be honest, you're right. Is there much point in wasting Josh Acheampong in under-21s football? Not really. He's ready. But we also spoke about him being a right back coming into a right centre back and talked about his passing maybe coming in more into play. If Maresca feels like, no, let's keep him around, I want to mould him, maybe there's a case to be made that him and maybe even Tyreek George, we talked about touchline winger, pocket player, that maybe that's an arc we're going to see at Chelsea soon, that these top academy players maybe won't go on loan at all or initially, and they're going to be moulded by Maresca. And Josh is a player that I would understand very much if Maresca wanted to keep him and mold him, because I think there is a molding to be done there.
Yeah, I think a big element here is also the fact that, of course, me and Jacek don't have the Chelsea glasses on. So for Felix, it's so advantageous to also have Josh in the squad when you're playing in free competitions with a conference league where you're likely going to go quite far, or excuse me, 4 competitions, because it's obviously English with 2 cups. There's so many opportunities for games time still with
And
him
Reece James
staying
in the
at
hospital as well.
yeah. And that, of course, as well. So game time is always available. But if you're saying from a purely player development standpoint, maybe that loan is more advantageous. So there it's really about how can Chelsea strike that perfect balance between doing what's best for the club in the short term and also doing what's best for Josh in the long term. And I would just like to almost stay with King Klatze for a second, because I mean, like Mika, I was not alive for King Klatze's really best times, but I think YouTube is obviously a great resource, and I kind of recommend to anyone to go on YouTube and look up some of his highlights, because for me, he's really kind of the defining player for modern Georgia, in the fact that he's really almost embodies really the skillful, silky, tricky winger, which we see Georgia just producing en masse. In my former job at Nordensa, I was tasked with kind of helping one of our athletes who played in the Georgian in first division and second division. So I watched a lot of footage of kind of Georgian first division and second division matches, and even there, even in second division football, which is really not a great level, you still see how much kind of individual quality you have in wide positions to kind of beat a man, to have the freedom and creativity to go 1v1 with your opponent. I almost think of Georgia a lot of times as like the South America of Europe, in a sense, because there's just so much kind of individual creativity that you really don't typically associate with anything in Europe, let alone Eastern Europe or a country that's a former member of the USSR. It's kind of like the polar opposite of what you see from a cultural context in Georgia.
Yeah, definitely. And you've touched upon a very good point, because I've also heard from a few international scouts that some people call Georgia the Brazil of Europe, which is a great compliment.
I didn't want to go that far. I stuck with South America to give a little bit of a leeway, but Brazil, maybe they need to qualify for a few more international tournaments, and then I'll go for Brazil.
Well, definitely. That's why I wanted to say that it's a great compliment. If you ask me, we're not as talented as Brazilians are, and I don't think that there's a nation on this planet that is remotely close to being as talented as they are. They are just on another level. They live in their own universe. They are just amazing. But it's definitely a great compliment, and I'll definitely take that. But yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why Georgian players develop this style of play, and why this is a common theme in Georgian wingers, is very simple, and actually it's very similar to why Brazilians and South Americans play in that way, because Georgian players, when they are growing up, they actually play in the streets quite frequently. And if there's one thing that street football allows you to develop, is let's say the adaptation on the pitch, because when you play in the streets, you play on different surfaces. Sometimes you play on concrete that is not very smooth. Sometimes you play on I don't know, maybe on sand, or on different surfaces that are not as smooth as the grass pitch. So what it allows you to do is to understand how the ball behaves in different scenarios, and how to control the ball in different cases, and what to do after that. Another thing that street football allows you to do is to develop faster decision making and your ability to play in tight spaces, because in most cases the street that you're playing, not only the street but wherever you're playing, is not a very wide area. It might be most probably very narrow, so you have to keep the ball in those tight spaces, and you have to manipulate, you have to break this pressing traps and all this kind of stuff, which then helps you to be a quicker player on the pitch when you're playing already on a much wider pitch. So that's why you will see the similarities between probably South American players and Georgians, and that's why in many countries across Europe, local authorities, basically governments and everything, like they're trying to build small stadiums, like small pitches, not stadiums, small pitches where kids can play, and that's exactly where they develop the skills. Like in those small pitches, these kids are touching the ball more frequently than they would touch the ball in a 1 hour or a 90-minute training 3 times a week. So that's why this sort of things are very important.
I have an even better comparison, to be honest. I wouldn't
Yeah.
say it's the South America of, the Georgia is the South America of Europe. I would even say that it reminds me more of North Africa, so Morocco, Algeria. I'm quite sure that if you will go to the streets of Marrakesh, you will find 100 Davitashvilis there. So creative dribblers, great in tight spaces. So yeah, for me, it's more North Africa than South America.
Yeah, look, I mean, I even had a post about North Africa on Twitter. Like, that is my personal favorite region to scout. Like, they also have this flair that they can dribble and do this cool tricks, but they have something different. Like, you can recognize that their dribbling and their skills is a bit different from the South American flair. You know, one of my favorite players is Tarabt, the one who played for QPR. Absolutely amazing. Like, he's just incredible. So that's exactly what I love about this North African players.
I think it would be a great episode almost in itself to go through all the different dribbling characteristics and all the different technical qualities that define nations around the world. I think that will be someone that will maybe have Mika on for again. But I think the factor that really is interesting is kind of this push towards small-sided football, because it's such a big element in Germany now that our culture is missing exactly what makes Georgia thrive, and I think what Georgia's missing is almost what Germany has, right? We have extremely well-coached children from a young age who know how to play in a 3-5-2 and a 4-3-3 and a 4-4-2 and know how to adapt to multiple positions. But when you kind of put them in unfamiliar situations, they can almost function like robots sometimes, where they don't know how to kind of make decisions for themselves, versus in Georgia, you have kind of really players who have kind of the creative and self-autonomy to make their own decisions and come to solutions on their own. But then when it comes to things like, okay, how do we maybe manage a game in the 80th minute when we're winning 1-0? And how do we kind of, make smart decisions to kind of help the team succeed? That's where they maybe have some failures in certain regards.
Definitely. But one of the benefits of that is that this tactical understanding and game management and everything else is coachable. Like, you can actually develop that later on, whenever you want, actually. Not whenever you want, but even if you're 22, 23, 24, you can coach that. You can develop that. But this sort of creative things are established earlier on, like when you are, I don't know, 11, 12, 13. That's when you should actually play football as frequently as possible, and in those small pitches, in those tight spaces, because that's exactly when you develop those skills that are not as easily coachable later on. And probably if you don't have it in your earlier years, you might not even be able to develop that later on.
I call it the on-the-ball bravery. So, for example, when I came to Belgium, I was 15 when I came to Belgium, and in Poland, I was considered a really solid center back that nobody could get past me. And I was feeling so strong. So I went to school, and we had our first gym class. and I played with mostly guys from the Moroccan origins, and they completely destroyed me. Like really, after 1 hour, I was feeling like a loser. Like what a hell! And I asked them, guys, where do you play? Like Anderlecht and Liège? And they said, no, man, we just play on the streets. And yeah, that's when I understood that yeah, my football career is not going in the very good way.
La Masia is, of course, the famed youth academy in Barcelona. I would argue the most famous academy in world football. They've produced so many talents that we'll get onto in this episode and so many still to come. And Arsene, when we speak about La Masia, what is it that you really think they do different than other academies in world football? What is the secret behind their success that they're able to produce just an outrageous amount of talent for the highest level?
The thing that stands out with La Masia is its mythology. Since Johan Cruyff took over in Barcelona, he specified like the academy should be priority, and from then everything changed there. You don't look at the physicality, but more about the technique. The players are developed to play for the first team rather than like for other academies that they make professional footballers rather than those who specialize for the first team to play with possession, to play with technique, understanding football, with the intelligence and so on. I think that was the what makes it more successful for Barcelona's first team, because sometimes you see those La Masia graduates go abroad and not reach the potential they were expected to achieve during their academy levels and so on. But sometimes you also have successes like Grimaldo, who also now exploding in Bundesliga, and many other examples as well.
Yeah, I think this DNA is extremely important because every time a player comes out from the academy of Barcelona, they play always the same system, right? And when they break out to the first team, there's always the same system as they played at the academy level. It doesn't happen in other clubs. Let's take an example of Real Madrid. You can have Mourinho, you have Ancelotti, so different approaches, and the players need to adapt. In Barcelona, they don't need to adapt. They know what they have to play. They just need to adapt to the level, intensity. But this is also a problem, in my opinion, for players who do not make it to the first team. Of course, they need to leave Barcelona and they go to a teams like, let's say, I don't know, Getafe, and it's a completely different football, completely different style, completely different life. So it's very often complicated for guys, for example, Alex Collado. He was a really good player. He doesn't do really well because he struggles. He struggled a lot to adapt to another system. But yeah, so it's genius, but it can be problematic as well.
Yeah, for me, I think the focus of Barca and the academy, what makes them so distinct, is that you really don't see them at all develop for the purpose of selling in the academy. They really develop for the purpose of integrating into the first team, and those who don't integrate into the first team will then obviously move elsewhere. But they're not necessarily seeking out players who then in 2 3 years maybe have the physical body type and those qualities for the Premier League. They're purely looking for the Barca DNA players. I think that's something where it's very, very unique, something that has been going on for centuries. And like Jacek said, whereas in other countries, the academy really needs to adapt itself to the standards of the first team. I would argue in Barca, it's even the first team that needs to adapt to the academy. I mean, you look at coaching hires in the past, they've always been kind of in the DNA of integrating youth players, bringing youth players forward, playing a football that's transitory to the qualities in Barca's academy. And you really see that also highlighted this season where Hansi Flick's integrated so many countless young talents who we'll get onto in just a minute. But Arsene, I mean, is that really a factor where you say Barca needs to develop to be able to kind of sell more academy players for higher sums that don't necessarily make the grade? Or do you say that's something that really comes with the perils of this system of really bringing through players that are pure Barca talents and is not something you really want to give up to just get mere profits in the transfer market?
Well, I think you can achieve both, to be honest. Still developing the talent for the first team, but also develop them and then selling them for profit, like even having like a percentage of future sale or having some kind of rights to them, like as Real Madrid does very well, to be honest. because I believe that the potential is there for the players, but of course, development and adapting to another style of play can be difficult for them. And that is why I believe, for example, a good loans from Juvenil A to third division to another clubs will be kind of beneficial, because we saw Fermin Lopez, for example, benefit a lot from it. Then he came back from the loan, had a good season at Lenges, and then impressed Xavi and stayed in the first team, and now he's doing very well. Also, there's like Arne Comas, who did well on loan, came back to Barcelona B, did well, but wasn't able to make the first team impression and went to Basel. So if they can develop something like that loan scheme that could benefit both the player, both the club, would be perfect.
Yeah, and I think what Barcelona does, I said it's problematic, like for these players that do not make it to the first team, but by definition, academy needs to produce players for the first team, and this is what Barcelona does. Then you have these examples of Alex Collado who didn't make it and he struggles, but yeah, I think it's the right way. I see nothing wrong with like selling academy players for good money like Real Madrid, but your main thing you need to focus on is to produce players for the first team. And Barcelona does it like they're the best in that.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we've spoken in private many times about this. I think one of my biggest qualms with German football at the moment, specifically with Borussia Dortmund, is the fact that you have such a high caliber youth development. You have kind of a constant team who's competing for U19 Bundesliga titles, U17 Bundesliga titles, but you're never finding ways to integrate these players into the first team. I mean, you looked at it, especially this season again, bringing a guy like Tom Rota out on loan, Koulibaly as well, who just had another excellent performance in the Champions League midweek. And when you're in kind of moments like for Barca the past few years, or now for Dortmund as well, where you are under pressure because you're not achieving targets in league and you're not having a manager who can really have that success of a Klopp or a Tuchel in the past, then these young players from the academy can be kind of that shining light for fans to kind of embrace the club in these difficult times and really find meaning in these failed moments. That's something we see a lot of clubs around the world not necessarily get right. And I think that's something that Barca, be it through their own decision making or just from the talent in the academy, have consistently found a good balance to give kind of meaning beyond just the results week to week.
They have the same problem with Atletico. So in Atletico, Cholo Simeone rarely uses academy players. So yeah, there was Hoken, then we have Pablo Barrios. So every 10 years, basically, an academy player. It needs to be more because the Academy of Atletico, of course, it's not of the same quality as La Masia, but there are still plenty of good talents. And like for me, academy players are part of identity, and they're so important for fans. You know, I have many Turkish friends, and they say they don't really care about the academy. They just want quality on the pitch. But every time there is a great academy player like Arda Güler or Semih Kılıçsoy, they're so proud of them. They're much more proud than for a mercenary player who came at the age of 31 from the Premier League. So it's really important, and yeah, being a La Masia fan, La Masia enjoyer like Arsene, it needs to be a great thing. It makes your life much better.
And when we're talking about first team graduates from the academy, it's impossible not to mention Antoni Milambo. He's a 19-year-old attacking midfielder, the youngest debutant in Feyenoord's Eredivisie history, making his debut as a 16-year-old. He had a bit of a stop-start tenure under Arne Slot. We mentioned it a bit in the previous episode when we talked about kind of Arne Slot's era, but I think he's been one of the biggest benefactors from the appointment of Brian Priestley, really coming into his own and becoming a key player. Absolutely top performances in Feyenoord's 2 Champions League victories, and in general, just really beginning to show also the promise that he had at such young ages. So, Antoni Milambo, Jacek, you have a jersey of him at home well before he was even one of the top talents on global football's radar. But Johan, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts about him, and is this kind of his breakthrough season?
Yes, and like Jacek said in the show last week, we were a little bit worried because he was there at such a young age. He made his debut, and we were like, okay, this is going to be the new next talent. And then it basically we saw him disappear. He played his games with under 21. He wasn't really performing well over there. He wasn't really excelling, so he wasn't really knocking on the door at the first team. So everybody expected him to maybe move this summer, maybe on a loan move or maybe for good. But then Priske was quite clear and said, no, I see some talents in this guy. I want to work with him. And it's been panning out well. He's been playing very good. He has a role now. That was his problem with Arne Slot as well. Sometimes he was used as an 8, sometimes he was used as a 10. And now Priske is quite clear. He's just using him as a number 10 attacking midfielder. And he's been doing well. He's been scoring those 2 goals at Benfica, like you said. Score also the goal against Girona. So he's our top scorer in the Champions League right now, and he's got a contract for a couple of years left. So we hope to see him for a couple of years at Feyenoord and maybe walk the same route as Kukçu or Geertruida, proven players that played more than 150 games for Feyenoord and won prizes at the club.
When I first watched Milambo, he gave me he reminded me of Paul Pogba, and I think it's still a quite valid comparison. Of course, Pogba is not having the greatest time now, but I still used to love Paul Pogba as this elegant box-to-box midfielder who can provide really good numbers. And I see that in Milambo. I watched him for the first time probably at the Euros in the 17 when they made the final and they lost the final against France. But let's just remind some of the players of this French squad: Désiré Doué, Matistel, Atangana. So incredible, one of the best under 17 sides that I have ever seen in my life. And Holland had this midfield with Milambo, Silvano Vos, and Gabriel Misapui. And I think out of these 3 players, people were rating more the 2 others, so Vos and Misapui. And right now, Milambo is having the best time out of the 3. So I'm really happy. I was always a fan. As I mentioned, I own, as you mentioned, Adam, I own his shirt. So definitely my favorite Feyenoord player right now.
Yeah, I was a little bit hesitant when you said the Paul Pogba comparison because Milambo is obviously quite a bit shorter than Pogba still. Milambo's 1 meter 79. I think Pogba's 1 meter 88. So he's definitely got size on him. But I don't think we should discount how physically robust Milambo is. I mean, you can see also why he thrives in central channels and why Feyenoord are not just saying, okay, fast, technical player, let's put him on the wings. Because Milambo could also play on the wings and probably would be a pretty decent winger as well. But he has this physical robustness that really allows him to get through central channels well. He's able to hold players off. He's able to carry through kind of against bigger opponents. So that's kind of his X factor, I would say. And in general, I really, really love these athletic, technical dribblers who normally you would say you put them on the wings, but nowadays are moving more towards the center. I think 2 of the biggest examples are guys like Musiala and guys like Xavi Simons as well. And I think that Milambo is in the same vein. He's also this really, really pure technical player who also has the physicality and the robustness to be effective in central channels. And the final thing I'll say on him as well, he's actually a very, very good finisher. He's super, super technical finisher. His inside the foot finish is kind of what I really love. You can see that he's very, very detail oriented in how he decides what to use in moments. He has a really, really calm and composed strike. So he's not really rushed in these moments. And I think that he'll have a big, big future beyond Feyenoord.
Exactly. As I said, I watched him when he was 16, so physically he was really, really strong and bigger than most of the opponents. That's why I compared him to Pogba. But you can see this elegance in moves. So like Pogba moves and Milambo just has it. Also this versatility. He can play almost anywhere in midfield, and as you said, even on the false wing sometimes. So a top prospect, and I'm so happy. I'm still waiting for the explosion on one of his teammates from this Dutch under 17 team. So Isaac Babadi was the main star of this under 17 team. But yeah, it's Milambo's year. It's definitely not Babadi's year yet, but it's Milambo's year, and I'm really happy.
I think now's a good time to even speak about the Mohammed VI Academy a bit. It was founded in 2009 by King Mohammed VI with the mission of developing young Moroccan football talent and providing a pathway for these local players into professional football. become a real cornerstone of Morocco's ambitions to become a key player in African and global football. And it's already really had some fruit come from its labor. You have the likes of Azzedine Ounahi, Youssef En-Nesyri, and Naif Aguerd, who have all gone on to have really good careers in Europe and beyond. Talk to me a little bit about how this academy is really forming a institution for Morocco to build the success at youth level.
I think that the IMF has certainly played a big role in Moroccan football in recent years. But I have actually my own criticism, to be honest, because I feel that they are yet to meet the expectations and the big investment. If, for example, I ask you now, how many players from the IMF have managed to have a decent career in Europe, for example, over 14 years of producing talent? The answer, I think, would likely be only three. So 14 years old for three players that are like 7 out of 10, there is a bit of disappointment in this. IMF is yet to produce, for example, an 8 or a 9 out of a 10 player who, for example, can be a starter for a top European team. Or if you look at Egypt, despite having like far less financial support, I think that they have managed to produce top players in Moussa Salah and some really of Africa's greatest players. I think like academies in Generation Foot in Senegal, for example, have done better. Also, other African academies with few resources have still managed to achieve better results and produce better talents. I think it's time for the IMF and the player to step up because the results, considering the level of investment and the hype, is not there yet. Also, I believe that the IMF has negatively impacted club and academies in Morocco because when you are a top talent, for example, in a Moroccan club, you know that the IMF will mostly come for you, and it's almost impossible for clubs to keep their talents because you, as a young player, you know that the IMF will offer you better facilities, more money, more chances of being scouted and join the national team, etc. So it's not a good deal for the club. And ironically, actually, the best Moroccan local product in the best 14 years is not made in the IMF, but actually it's Yassine Bounou who was like 100% outdated product. That's my honest opinion about the institution. I think that they have done good, but they should do better. That's my honest opinion, yeah.
It's a great insight, by the way, because when I talk to my Moroccan friends, I always praise Mohammed VI Academy, and they say, "Yeah, wow, it's such a great project." Right now, I will try to limit my praise a bit. My praise comes from this under 17 AFCON when I think Mohammed Academy 6 had like 8 players in the squad. So I thought that it's a top academy producing so many talents, but it turns out that they have the monopoly in Morocco for the talent. So they take all the best talents from the country. So yeah, it was a great insight. What?
Yep, absolutely. It's always really, really cool to get the insight of someone who's directly in the country rather than just us looking in from the outside where we maybe have a different perspective. But Jacek, just sticking with this topic for a moment, what is your opinion more generally on these big centralized academies? I mean, we looked especially in a lot of the developing footballing countries, like in the Middle East, for example, and like in Africa as well. And these academies are really growing in prominence. I looked at the Aspire Academy with exceptional facilities, high level coaching from Europe, but they've struggled to produce talent that's necessarily in tune with the investment that they've made. So do you think these academies can really bear fruit, or do you think it's better to have a more organic talent development where players are naturally just coming through at the local club sides and then moving into first team setups like we see in European football?
Well, it depends on the country. I always say that the number of top academies always affects the general level of football. Let's look at France. You mentioned Clairefontaine, but in France we have like 15 to 20 top academies. Even let's say Valenciennes, they have a top academy. So yes, but on the other hand, let's say that Generation Foot in Senegal, it's a blessing for Senegal. ASEC Mimosas in Ivory Coast is a blessing for Ivory Coast. So it really depends on the country and on the financial and human potential. So I'm a big fan of Generation Foot and ASEC Mimosas, but I would like to see more than one top academy in these countries because, as I always say, the future of football is in Africa. There are so many talents in Africa, and there is still this passion we are slowly losing in Europe.
Yep, very, very interesting. I think we've always had a similar perspective on these topics, but it's good to hear it here as well on the podcast for the listeners. Wad, returning to you though, when we speak about the Mohammed VI Academy, do you think that it's just a fact of it needing reform, better coaching, better talent, better facilities, or just a different vision in general? Or do we really need a revolution in Moroccan football where we potentially give kind of the onus for talent development back to the clubs for them to produce players for their first teams or eventually moves to Europe right away then when they turn 18?
To be honest, I don't think that they need better coaches because they actually already like get best coaches from Netherlands, from Belgium, from Spain. So it's not a problem of coaches. To be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of these big centralized academies, but I would say that the IMF has definitely played a role. That's like 100%. All I'm saying is that they need to step up and they need to provide better.
And what would you tell us about the facilities of, for example, Mohammed VI Academy? How would you compare the facilities, the general level of the academy to Wydad and Raja Casablanca? Like, what would be your top three youth facilities in Morocco right now?
It's a surprise, okay? Best three youth facilities in Morocco are not Wydad and not Raja. I would say the best are, of course, the academy, the Mohammed VI Academy. Second, I would say are Asefa. They have a really good academy as well. And third, I would say Fatah. They are really good as well in youth football. Lots of Morocco under 16, under 14s. When you look at those very youth national teams, lots of them are from Fus, from Far, and from Mohammed VI Academy. Those three clubs absolutely have the best youth facilities in the country.
And is there a big difference between AMF and these two others? For example, I can imagine that Generation Foot in Senegal, they have by far the best facilities in the country, like really a few levels above the others. So the IMF is really that's above them, or they're quite similar, but IMF still has slightly better.
They are literally much better, really much better, because they provide like best coaches in youth football in Europe. They provide you world class facilities. So basically, you just go in there, you are going to I would say European academy in the country. But that's the problem, because when you have these facilities, when you have those coaches, when you make this investment, when you are spending all this money, the outcome should be much more than just three players in 14 years old. That's my point of view.
When you put it so blankly, which I think you have to, it shines kind of a darker light on what we from the outside looked as this net positive for Moroccan football.
Yes. So a complete and dominant center back. For me, there are two versions of this position. So there is a complete and dominant center back. So someone who combines qualities of a ball playing center back and pure defender, non-nonsense center back. So someone who is not the most elegant on the ball, but he can really thrive in a possession-based system. He has no problems whatsoever with the ball at his feet. Plus, he's a very good defender. And then we also have complete dominant and elegant center back. So a defender who's a really good stopper. Plus, he's very good on the ball. He's not only good on the ball, he's very good on the ball, and you can see this elegance. For me, complete dominant and elegant center back personally is the like the ultimate evolution of a center back Pokemon, let's say.
Yeah, you heard it here first. The complete dominant, elegant, the Raichus of our center back evolution. Very, very rare. Do you maybe have an example of a complete dominant, elegant that comes to mind?
Yes, for me, like the best example, and I'm a huge fan of this player since I first saw him in Ligue 1 a few years ago. It's William Saliba. I think he's the best example right now of a complete dominant and elegant center back, a player who's a pure joy to watch. So you can say that he's a ball playing center back, and I will agree with that. But he still has these defensive skills very developed, which I was actually afraid of when he moved to the Premier League. I thought that yeah, he will make 2-3 mistakes, which he was making in Ligue 1, because he was very young, and it's completely normal. It's part of the process to make mistakes for a young center back. But his career in the Premier League exceeds even my expectations. So for me, he's already one of the best center backs in world football. I saw that yesterday someone said that he will be one of the players that Real Madrid will want to sign in the future, and yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, I think he's a player that every club in world football would want to sign, to be honest. I don't think anybody would say no at the moment to a William Saliba. Yeah, speaking of Saliba, also, I think it's a good time to bring up my complete and dominant center back. He's also French. He's also right footed, but he's obviously not Saliba yet. But he's still a very, very interesting player. Jeremy Jacquet. He's a France U20 international, an absolutely superb U19 Euros. I would argue the best center back at the tournament, but I know Jacek, you'll maybe have a different answer to that in just a moment. As regarding his career right now for club, he's on loan from Stade Rennes to Clermont Foot in the French second division. He's been there since January last year, and he's already a key starter at Clermont Foot, playing a really important role there. And for me, he's, like you say, a true, complete, and dominant center back. His frame, his absolute build is just absolutely what you would expect from a French center back. So physically robust, tall, huge legs, can compete with any player in senior men's football already. But he's also very, very cool and collected on the ball. He's got the qualities you would expect from a player developed at Stade Rennes, one of the leading producers of talent in French football. So one of so many talented French center backs. I mean, it's the producer of talent, I would say, for complete and dominant center backs when we speak about what country is producing those players the best. And yeah, expect him to be at a top club very, very soon. Probably the next player to go to RB Leipzig, because that seems like where every complete and dominant center back from France goes. So keep an eye on him.
Yes, and I think we should give some love for Stade Rennes. What a generation, Adam. Come on. Like Desire Doué, Matistel, Leslie Ugochukwu, and then Jeremy Jacquet. So a really underrated player, I would say. I made a talent of the day with him a few months ago. Before he even made his senior debut, he was playing for the second team of Stade Rennes, and people were asking me, who the hell is this guy? He's quite old, let's say, like, in France, when you are 16, 17, and you already play senior football, like Lenny Yoro or Ayub Bouadi. So Jeremy Jacquet will be like a rabbit from the hat. So another Ren Academy graduate that will make it to a really high level. I'm a big fan, but what you said about being the best center back at the Euro under 19s, not. Sorry, Adam. The best center back at the Euro under 19s was actually my pick. So Jarek Gąsiorowski. Jarek Gąsiorowski, who's half Spanish and half Polish, and there are still many people in Poland hoping that he will choose Poland. I always say, no, he won't, unless something really bad happens to his career. But as of now, Jarek Gąsiorowski is probably one of the most talented teenage center backs in world football, and it's really amazing to see. Well, right now quite often, but I hope they will start playing together very soon with Christian Mosquera and Jarek Gąsiorowski. What an incredible job by Valencia Youth Academy. Valencia Youth Academy, actually, they are called Paterna, and so big respect to Paterna. Jarek Gąsiorowski is one of this really crazy group of players that are making it through in Valencia. He's a definition of a complete dominant and elegant center back, as he's really good on the ball. I would compare him to, let's say, Aymeric Laporte. He has a similar style. He's also physical, great on the ball, great positioning, quite fast. Was also playing as a left back sometimes. So a top prospect. His explosion in La Liga hasn't been made yet, but he will start playing very regularly soon. And yeah, he will be on the radar of many top European clubs, I would say within 2 years.
Yeah, I obviously mentioned Jacquet as my top pick, but I mean, Gazaroski is right up there with a superb U19 campaign with Spain. And like you say, I find that the complete and dominant center backs are often those who are the most mature at young ages. And you see with Gazaroski that he is so ready to play senior minutes in La Liga. I have absolutely no qualms about throwing him in there as a manager because I just know that he'll be able to perform so well because he can do so much. He can perform in so many different roles. Whether they're playing against Vallecano at home or Barcelona away, I think that Gazaroski has qualities to confront both matches and excel in both situations.
Yes, and I would also like to add that for me, he wasn't only the best center back at the Euros. For me, he was also one of the three MVPs of the tournament. So I was really hoping that he will receive the award. He didn't, but yeah, I think he was truly one of the top three players at this tournament for me.
Normally, I would say that Jacek's Polish glasses blinding his sight a little bit, but Gazarovski was truly an exceptional player there. And I think even if he had a Spanish last name, Jacek would have been so high on him.
But about Aranjo and José Giménez, I think if they are fit, I don't think you would find five better center back duos in world football. I mean, okay, José Giménez is not regarded as one of the best center backs in world football just because of his injuries. He was a monster of a talent. He was growing up alongside Diego Godin, and the only thing that stopped him to become one of the great center backs in world football were injuries actually. And every time I watch Atletico and I see Osama on the ground, I'm shaking. I'm really worried about him because he's so injury prone. As you mentioned, I respect that he has over 90 caps for Uruguay, but imagine without all these injuries, what kind of a legend he could have become for Uruguay and Atleti.
That's the thing with Josema. The amount of times he went down injured, and the fact he actually got 92 caps for Uruguay. You know why that is? Because mostly he's able to be back fit for Uruguay a lot of the time, and possibly to his own detriment. Maybe too early. And when you look at Josema, I remember 2013 qualifier against Colombia. He marked Falcao out of game. Falcao being at the top of his game back then. He was 18 years of age back then. He played against Sturridge and Rooney at the World Cup in 2014 when Sturridge was on fire. Did an incredible job on him. If you have that level of talent, that type of character, and you have no injuries or not a lot, you're talking about someone who is regarded as one of the best defenders in the 21st century. I really believe that. Maybe it seems like a hyperbole, but I actually do believe that. But yeah, if you are injured every, let's say, 3-4 months, it's so hard to actually be able to be on top of your game and also get better. Because how can you get better when you're injured like every 4 or 5 months for the last 6-7 years? And that's just a shame.
Yeah, especially at center back because I think routine and consistency is so important. And I don't want to always relate this back to the United States, but like we have, for example, Christian Pulisic, who is our star player, right? By far the best player. And the October national team camp, we played against Mexico. So the biggest match for the United States. It was only a Nations League fixture for us, but still a huge fixture. And Christian Pulisic did not travel with the squad because he felt a little bit of a muscular strain and decided to return to Milan to not get injured. Now I relate that back to José Giménez, which is the complete opposite. We're talking about a player who bleeds for the national team, who will go through anything to play for the national team, whether it's a friendly fixture or not. I mean, imagine Giménez returning to Atleti because he felt a little bit of strain in his muscle before a match against Brazil or Argentina. It's not in the nation's DNA to do that. The fans will never want him to play for the national team again if he decided to do that, I feel like. And I think that goes back to, again, what makes Uruguay special. Players have pride and they feel true passion for the national team, whether it's a friendly or whether it's a World Cup final. It's played in the exact same manner.
I mentioned this Garra Charrua and Grinta are not just empty words. These Uruguayans really feel the passion for football for the national team. I think the number of caps for Jose Jimenez, I remember doing a post a few years ago about 23-year-olds with the most caps for the national teams, and Josema was one of the top three players. So he already had like 40 games at the age of 23, I think. And it's funny, David, that you mentioned Falcao. I remember the anecdote of Radamel Falcao when Colombia was facing Uruguay. José Jiménez was marking Falcao during a corner kick, And you know Falcao, he was a killer. He was a monster in the penalty area. Nothing could distract him. And he mentioned that Jose came to him and asked him, why does the Colombian flag has three colors on it? And Falcao said that he was so incredibly distracted. Like this question was so stupid and ridiculous that then actually he was out for a few seconds. You can say that it was a stupid question, but it was also a really clever one from Josema.
Yeah, I remember that story. Yeah, I remember reading that how we like taunted Falcao all game and actually just breaking his concentration completely. Yeah, that was a fun story actually. But yeah, I mean, Josema, he's probably one of the big players of Uruguayan football in the last 20 years, I would say. But also it leaves you like with a little bit of a sour taste, bittersweet taste, because what could have been. Having said that, he's 28, 29, and he is actually this season. Jacek, I'm pretty sure this is the case, but this season he's when it comes to injuries, it's one of his best seasons so far. He's not missed a lot of games. So hopefully he's been able to improve right now and be well more reliable in terms of availability, because it can happen. I mean, Robben, for example, he's had a lot of injuries throughout his career, but later on in his career, I recall that he actually was a little bit more reliable in terms of availability. So maybe this is the case with Josema as well. Would be great.
I tell you, David, this season I watched every single Atletico game, and in some of these games, Josema was purely world class. And yeah, Atletico right now are having all kinds of problems, and if Josema will be out, it will get even worse. So I think the thing that we should respect a lot is that despite all these injuries, Josema Giménez will end his career as a Uruguayan and Atletico legend without any doubt.
Yeah, an absolute rarity also in modern football, I would say, to be a club and country legend.
David, do you think that Josema Giménez had more potential, well, had the potential to make a bigger career than Diego Godin? In your honest opinion?
It's a good question. A really good question, because obviously they're always compared. I mean, Godin was kind of the master, and Josema the apprentice. But I actually think he could, because he is quicker, more explosive, more physical, more imposing. So that's I remember him having really good games against Lewandowski, for example, really marking him out of the game because he was quick to everything. And Godin obviously relied more on his tactical knowledge, his know-how, being able to read the game, cut out danger, but not overcommitting himself, because that would be a problem for him. I mean, I remember him being sprinted by Suarez, so outsprinted by Suarez during Atletico Barcelona game, while Suarez was never the quickest, but at that moment he wasn't at all. So Josema had more physical capabilities, I think, than Godin, and I think therefore he probably could have overtaken him in terms of his career achievements. But so far it's not the case, because Godin obviously more longevity, more available in terms of when it comes to injuries. But yeah, it's interesting and quite a bit. It's entertaining to compare how their careers have been and how perhaps Josema could have been better. But it's a hard one, I guess. But if I have to answer, I say yeah, Josema could have become a bigger, a more accomplished player than Godin.
Agree. I honestly agree, even though like Godin is an exemplary player for me. Like he was the leader on the pitch, humble outside the pitch, like a great example for so many defenders or footballers. But I agree that Josema had slightly more potential. He was faster, he was better on the ball. I remember him playing at the youth level, even as a defensive midfielder, thanks to his ball skills. So yeah, it's a real shame that all those injuries came for Josema, because Godin, one of the strengths of Godin was his consistency. He was always there, like he was playing every game, so he was injury free. So a shame, but still Josema is only 29, so he has like at least 5 6 years of playing at a top level, and with being Uruguayan and knowing the longevity of Uruguayan players, maybe even more.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, obviously Jose Ma is a little bit more reliant on his physical attributes than Godin, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Jose Ma has already been at his peak or is currently in his peak. I think we see so many center backs, like Van Dijk is a great example, who compete when they get up to 32, 33, 34. So I don't even think this debate is fully closed yet, and maybe we still see Josema overtake Godin for the peak talent.
So the first, we had a lot of interest on South America as a whole, and obviously you guys mentioned there some of your potential future episodes that we could do on the continent itself. But first, let's go with each of your favorite players from South America as a whole that haven't yet transferred to Europe that you think will transfer to Europe.
Okay, so I will go with David Martinez. So an absolute star of Venezuelan football. He moved from Venezuela. Actually, he moved to the MLS, but I think he would be more than ready in short time to play in Europe. He struggled a bit with injuries, which is unfortunate. But yeah, he's probably the biggest Venezuelan talent I have ever seen. So an incredible player, and for sure the next icon of Venezuelan football if he stays injury free. And yeah, Venezuela has an interesting generation of players like Juan Arango, who plays for Girona, and some others. So definitely David Martinez. I would love to see him in Europe.
Yeah, I really have a soft spot for Venezuela in my heart, and it's because of that name Juan Arango, but not the one you mentioned, the older Juan Arango. He was an absolute legend of my childhood, playing for Gladbach, one of the best set piece takers I've ever seen. And David Martinez is also very, very high on my list for this selection as well. Like you say, I fell in love with him during the U17 World Cup. He's so elegant and so mobile for his size. He's explosive and dynamic. He's just got so much. I think the only thing is that he probably wasn't ready for Europe in his mind. I think you can see that he's still not necessarily there from a maturity and from a decision making perspective. And you even saw that in the MLS this season. I think there was kind of a game against Colorado Rapids where he kind of showed the golden and also the dark side of what he can bring to the game. So came on and just scored an absolutely incredible solo goal, that intricate tight space interplay, going and weaving between bodies. So a great goal to put LAFC 2-1 ahead. And then I think 11 minutes later, he got a second yellow card for kicking the ball away, which again is the most rookie mistake you can think of when on a yellow card. LAFC went on to lose the game 3-2, and I think he didn't appear for the next 11 or 12 games in the MLS for LAFC. So he does need a little bit more, I would say, decision making progress and also kind of this mental professionalism. But what he can do on the ball is simply exceptional. And on the topic of what he can do on the ball, that kind of leads me right into who my player is. I've gone for Mastantuono, a super talent from Argentina, a 10 out of 10 talent if there ever was a 10 out of 10 talent. He's again a 17-year-old real prodigy from River Plate. He's already played 31 matches for the River Plate first team this year, which as a 17-year-old is just insanity. Like, we're talking about one of the best clubs in world football. We're not even talking about South American football, one of the best clubs in world football. And the fact that he's been able to muster those numbers is incredible. I think he has around a 45 million euro release clause. And for me, I mean, we spoke about earlier in the episode, a guy like Georgi Sudakov, who clubs are willing to spend that money on. Don't spend that money on Sudakov. Spend that money on Mastantuono because he's truly a generational prodigy. Like we said, with Martinez, he's very similar in the fact that he's tall but so elegant in these tight spaces. For me, even better in these tight spaces than Martinez. He's such a good ball carrier. He's a very good ball striker also. There's not a lot that he can't do. So a real pure magician and entertainer who can also be very prolific at a high level.
Fully agree. If I would have to choose one player that I would need to watch for the 24 hours on YouTube, it would be Mastantuono. He's a pure joy to watch, and huge credit to River Plate Academy for having this incredible generation with Mastantuono, Diablito Echeverri, Subiabre, and Roberto. It's an amazing generation of players, but as you said, Mastantuono, pure gold and a left foot that could tie a tie.
The Arne Slot era, of course, from 2021 to 2024. Titles in Holland, in the Cup, in the league as well. Then, of course, some deep runs in Europe. But let's go back a little bit before then. What was kind of the mood like upon Slot's appointment in 2021? What club was he inheriting?
It was good to know that he came at like basically the worst time in the last couple of years we had at Feyenoord. We had the COVID, the pandemic. Then we got Dick Advocaat, who took over from Jaap Stam, who was sacked quite early in the season because he had a terrible run at Feyenoord. It was a complete mismatch with Feyenoord. We still don't understand why he was appointed as after Giovanni van Bronckhorst. Then Dick Advocaat took over, and then in that first season before the pandemic really hit us, and in which the season was cancelled, Dick Advocaat did okay. No, he did good. I should say he did good because we were like 12th in the league when he came, and at the end, when the season was cancelled, I think we were third with only a couple of points behind Ajax and AZ. And AZ at that moment had a coach which was called Arne Slot. It was his first season at the Eredivisie, and he was doing amazing. His name was already been rumored for a couple of years. This is the real deal. He's such a good coach. He was assistant at AZ for a couple of years. And then when Sean van der Brom left, then Arne Slot became the coach of AZ. He did very good in his first season, but then the season got cancelled, so there was no winner of the season. And the season afterwards, he did very good. But then Feyenoord wanted to find a new coach instead of Dick Advocaat, who was having a terrible season at Feyenoord. We became fifth. And then we talked with Arne Slot, and we were amazed that he was interested to go to Feyenoord, because everybody thought he's going to Ajax after Ten Hag is going away, because he's had a good success at Ajax, and everybody was thinking that he was going to a big club, which he did, of course. So everybody expected, okay, Arne Slot is going to be the next coach of Ajax. But then he said, okay, I'm interested in the project that Feyenoord has. Let me go there. So he came at the worst time. We were fifth. We had to play the preliminary rounds of the Conference League, and there was a lot of skepticism. Everybody was like, is he a match with Feyenoord? Because he likes to play attractive football. He likes to press high. So everybody's like, that's a completely different than what we had on the Dick Advocaat, which was very defensive and only concerned about not getting goals. So everybody was very curious how he would do, how he would end up, and well, the end result is he did very good.
Yeah, I can only say for me that Alkmaar squad, I think, yes, we've spoken about it a few times, but I was absolutely in love with that Alkmaar squad throughout COVID. I think I've never watched more football than during the coronavirus period. And that AZ team with the likes of Jesper Karlsson, one of my favorite players who I fell in love with, Teun Koopmeiners, who one of the most complete midfielders I've ever seen. So Arne Slot obviously had the raw materials available to succeed, but also what he got out of young players was just astounding. And like you said, it's why all the signals pointed to him going to Ajax, because it would have been kind of the traditional path that made so much sense. So, yeah, very, very interesting to see that he went to Feyenoord, but ultimately it played out in his favor.
There are many similarities in appointing Arne Slot to Feyenoord with Jurgen Klopp going to Liverpool, actually. I remember Jurgen Klopp was also linked with so many huge clubs in Europe, and he went to Liverpool in a very difficult period, and he completely changed them. And I think Arne Slot did the same thing with Feyenoord. Why I love Arne Slot and why I was so positive about him going to Liverpool is the fact that he has the charisma. Eric Ten Hag, I know that all the people hate Eric Ten Hag right now, and they will say he's not a good coach. Eric Ten Hag is a great tactician. Peter Bosz is a great tactician, but I think Arne Slot, out of the three, is the guy with the most charisma. But even despite that, when he was moving to Liverpool, I said it's a good choice, it's the best choice, but he will struggle a lot because you can't just replace Jurgen Klopp like that. You can't just replace a coach with this philosophy, with so many years, and coach who is an absolute legend for a club. And yeah, Arne Slot, thanks to his incredible character, he's doing marvelous things for Liverpool. And I am a big fan, but I'm still slightly surprised. He's exceeding my expectations a lot. And it shows how much of a coach and how much of a man he is.
Yes, it's not surprising for us that he went to Liverpool and he's doing up. He's doing so well over there, because when he came at Feyenoord, there was a lot of expectations, and he exceeded expectations by a landslide. We were kind of annoyed at Rotterdam when the rumors were there that he was going to Liverpool, and all the Liverpool fans were like, "Who is this bold guy? We don't want another Erik ten Hag. We don't want a Dutch coach who's not doing well." So we were like, "Okay, you're not allowed to have him. We'll keep him here." But then of course he went to the Liverpool, and he's doing amazing. And we already thought he was the best coach in the world at this moment when he was at Feyenoord. Of course, we have the Feyenoord glasses on, so we're kind of biased, but we're very proud, and we think it's very fun that he's doing so well at Liverpool. So it's not a surprise for us, but all of the Feyenoord fans are following Liverpool very closely this season because it also feels a little bit as our success what he's doing at Liverpool.
Yeah, I think what Jacek mentioned there, and what you also said as well, Johan, the charisma is such a vital piece when going to the Premier League, because the media is just so different than in Holland. It's so different than in Germany as well, right? I mean, you also see kind of a little bit like how Tuchel and Klopp fared in England, how different that was, because just Klopp is also just far better at handling media and handling external pressure. And that's something that I think Arne Slot is really made to do. You see kind of that he exudes confidence, he exudes a mentality, and he's not almost too caught up in his own ideas. He's able to kind of disperse them and gather other opinions when needed, and also be ready to adapt to new challenges.
And that's why Erik ten Hag didn't succeed in England, in my opinion. I would even say that he even betrayed his own philosophy after being attacked, and there was too much pressure on him. He started doing some tactical misjudgments and got lost at one point. But still, in my opinion, he's a very good tactician and a good coach. He just doesn't have what it takes to manage a huge club from the Premier League. And Arne Slot, he has it. And one more thing about him, which I really love, is like making players better, finding players, right system, right roles, and just helping them fulfill their potential. I think the main example right now is Ryan Gravenberch, an amazing talent like 5 years ago at the toekomst of Ajax, and right now he's probably one of the best midfielders on the planet. So he finally found a coach who plays him in the right way, and I think Arne Slot and Ryan Gravenberch is a mix out of dreams.
There's a similar story at Feyenoord when he arrived. Because Feyenoord had Luciano Geertruida, which was a defender who was doing very well at the academy. He already made his debut, and he played quite a lot on the Dick Advocaat. But the overall sense at Feyenoord was, he's good, but we don't know. And he wanted the contract. There was a contract issue. His contract was almost done, and Feyenoord was thinking about not renewing his contract because they were not completely convinced that he was going to be a vital player for Feyenoord 1. And then Arne Slot took over, and he said, first thing that needs to be done is renew his contract because he needs to be one of the first guys that I'm going to be working with. And we all know how that ended up. He became, well, basically one of the best players at Feyenoord for the last 3 years, 4 years that we had. He played so well, and that is exactly the same as you've been mentioning with Gravenberch. And what I really like about Slot, I also want to add that up. At that podcast, we had a lot of interviews with players that are first team players, but also substitutes. Even though the substitutes they didn't get a lot of minutes, all the substitutes said this Arne Slot guy is the real deal. I love him because he's very transparent. He's clear. He tells me why I'm not playing or why I'm being subbed off or why the other guy's playing more. So even the substitutes always said Arne Slot is the best coach I ever had, and you don't often hear that, and that shows how charismatic he is, how smart he is. He's a very smart guy. He's very good with media. He's funny, which also helps in England, and it's also helped here in Holland. He's the real deal. I think he's gonna be the best coach in the next 20 years or something.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't want to slate Ten Hag, because as we said, I think we're actually all quite big fans of what Ten Hag can deliver, or at least two of us. I'm not sure about what Johan's opinion is, but
I like slaying
mean,
him. I don't like him, so.
Okay, well, the majority, at least, on the Football Talent Show are fans. But I mean, you compare then, for example, the whole Jadon Sancho fiasco, right? A player on the bench not getting minutes, and how that was handled from Ten Hag's perception. And I know I think the microcosm that is Manchester United also makes things far more difficult for any manager. I don't think it's as simple to say that had Arne Slot gone to Man United, everything would be working perfectly for him. I don't think that would be the case. I think Liverpool is also much better place to adapt for a coach like that. But still, I think there are some critical areas in player management, even all the way back to that Alkmaar team, which I spoke about, making a guy like Koopman as captain at such a young age and trusting him with so much. Also getting the most out of guys like Myron Boadu or Calvin Stengs, who have never been able to replicate that since. It shows just how good he is at this man management aspect that is critical in the current game.
I think Arne Slot is not only a good tactician but also a good psychologist. So he and as you said, Johan, he's a very cool guy, you know. So if you look in the interviews, you say to yourself, okay, he's a guy I would like to go for a beer with. And I had the same feeling with Jurgen Klopp, honestly. When you watch Jurgen Klopp, see, he's a human being, a normal human being that could be your neighbor. And I think Eric Ten Hag, as I said, Adam, you said that we are big fans. I'm a big fan of Eric Ten Hag being only a coach, a tactician, but not a big fan of the other side, which is extremely important as a coach. So being an educator, I don't think he's great at it, at least at a Premier League level.
The fun thing I should say is because I'm a Feyenoord supporter since '93, so we know our place in the food chain. When we have good players or good coaches, they leave to bigger clubs and where they can get more money and in bigger competitions. So I've seen a lot of players that I really loved leaving Feyenoord, but I was never as struck when Arne Slot left because he was like you said, he gave us something back that we lost for so many years. He gave us the belief that we were the best of the world. We didn't play Madrid, but I'm sure that if we had played Madrid, we as Feyenoord fans thought, okay, we're gonna win, we're gonna beat them. I don't care how good they are, because he gave us back something. He played such good football. The results were good. He's so charismatic. Every Friday he had a press conference, and all the Feyenoord supporters tuned in at work to watch the press conference. And that's crazy. It's crazy because he answered questions in a way that you and I should talk when we're at a bar. He respected the journalist. He respected also the fans. So he always gave clear answers, no bullshit. So yeah, I was struck. It still hurts me to say that he left. I would have loved him to stay forever at the club, but I know that's not realistic. And we had 3 years of him, and that's already one season extra than I expected when he did so well the first 2 seasons.
I'm always reminded of the club press conference when he came in at Liverpool when asked, "Oh yeah, Jose Mourinho's the special one. Who are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm the normal one." And I think that's very Arne Slot like as well. And it just bears repeating also what club he took over and where he led them in the end. So he took over a club that finished fifth in the previous season. It was their worst lead finish since 2011, and they were 29 points off of Ajax. So their arch rivals were miles ahead. And I think it's also important to mention he came into a side that then lost a guy like Stefan Berghuis to Ajax. So a guy who had 18 goals and 14 assists the previous season. You're basically losing a critical player in a bad side. I mean, how are you going to go further? You're trying to basically even just stay where you are when those are kind of the settings you come in. And then we fast forward only 3 seasons, and we have a club that finished second in the 2023-24 season after winning the league title the previous year. And still, even though they didn't win the league title, they actually accumulated more points than they did in the league title winning campaign and won the Dutch Cup. And I think the most interesting aspect of all is kind of the flip around of Ajax. So if you remember, they were 29 points off of Ajax when he took over. And 3 years later, they finished 28 points ahead of Ajax in the standings and beat Ajax 6-0, enacting Ajax's biggest defeat in Eredivisie history. So, I mean, truly remarkable kind of the change of fates. And we're talking about a 3-year window here, right? I mean, we're not talking about a decade in charge where this squad was completely revolutionized, like what Jurgen Klopp did, for example. Let's not forget how long Klopp also needed to really see kind of the first big successes. Arne Slot did this in a much, much quicker manner at Feyenoord, and I think that can't be spoken about enough. So talk me through a little bit of these 3 years, and also for you kind of the, let's say, 2 to 3 key moments that will stay in your memory forever.
Well, there was a lot of skepticism when he came, especially from the journalists here in Holland. Everybody's like, there's a mismatch. Arne Slot doesn't fit Feyenoord. So his very, very first match was in the first round of the qualifications for the Conference League. That's how badly we performed the season before. We ended up 5th. And we played against Drita, which is a club from, I think, Bosnia. It's so small. I never even heard of it. And it was a dreadful game. We played 0-0 over there. It was like one of the worst games I've ever seen. And all the journalists, everybody here in Holland was like, see, there you have it. Arne Slot is not a match. It's not good. Well, then the return at home, we got down by 2-0. They scored 2 quick goals. And in injury time, we scored a 3-2 in which why we advanced. So we almost got knocked out by Drita in the very first round of the qualification for the Conference League. And then we ended up almost winning it, unfortunately losing in Tirana against AS Roma. So that's one of the critical moments. From the first moment on, I think his 4th league match was against PSV. PSV was way better. I think they had 66% the ball. But still, we won 0-4 because he made some tactical changes. He always plays 4-3-3. But then that game, he played a kind of 4-4-2 with Guus Til as a kind of striker, which he really wasn't. But what helped him that his start was so good. He did so well in the beginning, even though the Drita games were terrible and we almost got knocked out by Drita. But after that, he felt, okay, I have some confidence by the fans. They support me. They seem to like me. Even though the squad, if you look at the squad he inherited from Dick Advocaat, wasn't that good. Lots of players left that summer. Lots of players also left that winter. I think he had a complete turnaround of the team he had when he started working with from at the end of the season. Then he basically let the foundations for the year after, in which we weren't the favorites to win the title. Everybody was expecting Ajax or PSV to win the title, and then we had a remarkable season in which we won basically all the games, and unfortunately got knocked out by again AS Roma in the Europa League.